anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer for you.
Are you? You obviously took part in the recent primary. Just if you could comment a little bit about your take on the difference and the uniqueness of this caucus process and the challenges that presents and how you plan on attacking it.
The previous run was based on who had the most money. And I don't like that. I really think they should have a limit on how much money you spend in a primary or even a general election, because I don't think you have free speech if you can't be heard, because they overpower yours with all the advertising. This time, it'll actually be the people who are part of the party who have researched it and know who they want. Now, if you think about what I'm talking about with the attorneys, okay? We, as the Republican Party, could topple the entire progressive liberal agenda, because there are actually about, I think, 56 senators that are officers of the courts. Well, at least they have a bar license. Well, okay, at least they, yeah. As far as I know, they're attorneys. The vast majority of them are. They are also all Democrats from what I hear. Now, their votes did not count on Obamacare. Did it pass? No. Because you'd have to look at the remaining votes that were cast and say, well, were half of those for or against it? Did it pass? It didn't pass at all. It only had 2 or 3 votes if you look at it that way. It would overturn the entire liberal agenda. The progressive liberal agenda would be gone, because we could go back and systematically look through the laws and say, did this one pass? And if it didn't pass, we would have to reaffirm that we did want it, with just the people voting. I want this country to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. And right now, with the majority of officers in the Senate, it's not of the people, by the people, for the people. It's of the officers, by the officers, and for the officers. And I look at it this way. It's like a ball game, okay? They wrote the Constitution like a game. It was the people versus the government. And the people were supposed to be writing the laws because they wanted this game to go on forever, okay? They didn't want the government winning. So they let the people write the laws. And then the attorneys were the ones who were certainly supposed to be the referees. Okay? They would enforce the law as the people had written it. But if the attorneys are writing the law, then they, as referees, they're writing the laws that during the game, and they work for the other team. Because they're officers. In fact, every judge, until you get to the Supreme Court, every judge has to be an attorney. The only time at the Supreme Court level, you don't have to be an attorney. And there's only ever been a couple, well, few anyway, I don't know, maybe 3, that ever were not attorneys that got appointed to the Supreme Court. So if I'd heard this morning that there were 2 cases that the Supreme Court had ruled that, even though it says right on their certificates that they're officers of the court, that lawyers were not officers of the court. That was the Supreme Court ruling. Well, I haven't read that, I don't know for sure. But if that is the case, then were all of the Supreme Court members non-officers? Because if they were officers, then they themselves should have recused themselves from the vote. And since there's only been 2 or 3 in the history of the United States that weren't officers on the Supreme Court, then you wouldn't have had a Supreme Court to vote on that was constitutionally or ethically holding office. It is a total ethics violation to have voted on it because it directly affects their branch of government. And not only does it affect ethics, not only does it specifically exclude it in the Constitution, but it's the most corrupt thing I've ever even conceived of. Because if there is a bankruptcy, who makes money? The attorneys. They're the only ones that make money in a bankruptcy. If there are more divorces, Who makes money? The attorneys. They're the only ones that make money. If there's more crime, who makes money? It's the attorneys. They're the only ones. It's a conflict of interest for them to be writing the law saying how much money they're going to be making. But they do it. Anyway, I do have other issues. Oops, right away. That I'm a gun owner, just so you know, and I have my lifetime carry permit. I want to abolish the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education. I don't like what they're trying to do to our schools and how they're restricting the states and limiting the funding and hurting them that way. I don't believe that we should have state bailouts. That's probably going to be coming up soon, especially with California behaving like they are. As far as I'm concerned, those lenders, they let them borrow the money. If California doesn't pay them back, that's not our problem. Indiana shouldn't have to pay to bail them out. Anyway, just a few more things. Is there anything else?
One question. You have to convince, 500 or so party precinct members that you're the guy, and you're entering a field that's becoming more and more crowded. Briefly, why you? What about your message is going to convince these party precinct members that they should caucus and vote for you?
Because of the lawyer issue. Because if you think about what I'm talking about doing, here's how I would do it. Okay, if I'm elected, I would gather all the other constitutionally minded people that I do believe are getting elected this time. I'm hearing about them all over the place. Okay, and there were already some there. And I would talk to them. I would show them in the Constitution where it says you cannot be an officer and serve in either house. And then I would have them back me. And I think they would. I mean, I'd say a fourth grader can interpret this. And it's a conflict of interest for the Supreme Court to interpret it. It's for the legislature. Okay? On the very first day, as soon as they try and convene, I would stand up and just simply call a point of order. A simple point of order. And I would demand that parliamentarian come down and read that section of the Constitution and answer me one question. And ask him, can any person under the United States be an officer anywhere under the United States and also serve in the legislature in either house? The only word I'd leave out is no. So he would have to answer it no. Okay? Then I would call the sergeant at arms and I would tell him we need to have all of the unconstitutionally holding officers that are holding seats removed before we can convene constitutionally, according to the parliamentarian. Okay? He makes the decision for what happens in the legislative branch as far as following the Constitution. After that, they would tell me to sit down and shut up. They would. I have no doubt. They're not going to take it lightly. But with all the other people backing me, the next person could stand up and do the same thing. And the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And if I have 30, 40, 50 people, or if I get the backing of the entire Republican Party, everybody will know. Now, the only way to do this, though, is to do it hard and fast. My father, sitting right here, he was a two-time mayor of Auburn. And he went to office for the sole purpose of getting jobs to Auburn. In the 8 years that he was mayor, he got 8 different industries into our small town. Now, that's a big accomplishment. I don't know if we've gotten any since he was mayor, but 8 during those years. But I don't want to compete against other cities to get jobs here. I don't want to compete against other states. We compete globally. And all our jobs are going elsewhere because of how we treat our companies. Let's bring them back. That's where I'm trying to go. But to end the corruption, to get this taken care of, he gave me 2 pieces of advice when I mentioned this. He said, don't mention lawyers. He says, because that makes you a target. And you don't want to mention that because they'll take you out. They're a powerful group. And he said, you need to work your way up through the ranks and get there.